Viश्वानि अग्नेनया सुपत्राय यस्मात्
विश्वानि देववायुनानि विद्वान्
विश्वानि वायुनानि
युयोधि यस्मज्जुहुराणमेनो भूयिष्ठं तेन मुक्तिं विधेम
अग्नेनया सुपताराय यस्मान्
अग्नेनया सुपताराय यस्मात्
विश्वानि देववायुनानि विद्वान्
विश्वानि देववायुनानि विद्वान्
योऽस्मज्जुहुरानम् एनो
युयोध्यस्मजुरानमयनो
भूयिष्ठां तेन मुक्तिं विधेम
युष्मान् तेन मुक्तिं विधेम
अग्नेनया सुपताराय यस्मात्
अग्नेनया सुपताराय यस्मात्
विश्वानि देववायुनानि विद्वान्
विश्वानि देववायुनानि विद्वान्
युयोधि यस्मज्जुहुरानमेनो
युयोध्यस्मजुरानमयनो
भूयिष्ठां तेन मुक्तिं विधेम
युष्मान् तेन मुक्तिं विधेम अग्नेनया सुपताराय यस्मात् विश्वानि देववायुनानि विद्वान् युयोध्यस्मजुरानमयनो भूयिष्ठां तेन मुक्तिं विधेम
अग्नेनया सुपथराय यस्मान्
अग्नेनया सुपताराय यस्मात्
विश्वानि देववायुनानि विद्वान्
विश्वानि देववायुनानि विद्वान्
युयोध्यस्मज्जुहुराणमेनो
युयोध्यस्मजुरानमयनो
भूयिष्ठं तेन मुक्तिं विधेम
भूयिष्ठं तेन मुक्तिं विधेम
अग्नेनया सुपताराय यस्मात्
अग्नेनया सुपताराय यस्मात्
विश्वानि देववायुनानि विद्वान्
विश्वानि देववायुनानि विद्वान् युयोध्यस्मजुरानमयनो भूयिष्ठं तेन मुक्तिं विधेम
अग्नेनया सुपताराय यस्मात्
अग्नेनया सुपताराय यस्मात्
विश्वानि देववायुनानि विद्वान्
विश्वानि देववायुनानि विद्वान् युयोध्यस्मजुरानमयनो
भूयिष्ठं तेन मुक्तिं विधेम
भूयिष्ठं तेन मुक्तिं विधेम
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. O my Lord, as powerful as fire, O omnipotent one, now I offer you all obeisances, falling on the ground at your feet. O my Lord, please lead me on the right path to reach you. And since you know all that I have done in the past, please free me from the reactions to my past sins, so that there will be no hindrance to my progress. So this is a long purport. So I'll go one paragraph first, and then we discuss that, and then go on the second one. By surrendering to the Lord and praying for His causeless mercy, the devotee can progress on the path of complete self-realization. The Lord is addressed as fire because He can burn anything into ashes, including the sins of the surrendered soul. As described in the previous mantras, the real or ultimate aspect of the Absolute is His feature as the personality of Godhead, and His impersonal Brahma Jyotir feature is a dazzling covering over His face. Fruitive activities, or the karma kand, path of self-realization, is the lowest stage in this endeavor. As soon as such activities even slightly deviate from the regulative principles of the Vedas, they are transformed into vikarma, or acts against the interest of the actor. Such vikarma is enacted by the illusion living entity simply for sense gratification, and thus such activities become hindrances on the path of self-realization. So, this is the concluding mantra or verse in Shri Ishopanishad, the 18th mantra. And the 17th and the 18th mantra, they classified as prayers. Prayers by the living entity to the Supreme Lord. And here, this mantra, we can take a couple of examples from the Shastras, where Prabhupada gives the purport here. So by surrendering to the Lord and praying for His causeless mercy, the devotee can progress on the path of complete self-realization. The Lord is addressed as fire because He can burn anything to ashes, including the sense of the surrendered soul. So it is very interesting because only Krishna is capable of doing this. People normally worship the demigods, devtas, with the intent of getting something material for sense gratification. But it is people who are not into devotional service or devotional activity, unfortunately do not know that all these demigods, they will or they can bestow all kinds of material necessities on you, but they cannot wash away your sins. That power only the Supreme Lord has. And why? Because the Supreme Lord is completely independent, or He is Swarat. So His decision-making skills, nobody can argue with. For instance, when Krishna and Balramji, right? When Krishna and Balramji graduated, in a sense, from Sandipani Muni's ashram, they had to give him some kind of dakshina. Right? It was a norm. So, does anybody here know what did the Guru Mata, was Sandipani Muni's wife? She said, what should you ask Krishna of? She knew that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. What did she say? Does anybody know?
Her dead son.
Bring her dead son back.
Exactly. So, this was requested by his Guru. So, what does Krishna do? Krishna directly goes to Yamraj. And Yamraj tells Krishna, my Lord, what you are asking for is, kind of unreasonable. Because as per my accounts, it cannot be done. Right? They had to die at a certain time, and that's what being done. And then Krishna tells Yamraj, I'll take care of it. You just do what I'm saying. So nobody else can do what Krishna does. So washing away the sins of a living entity, not even Brahma can do it. He is the creator. No, he cannot do it. Only Krishna, because he is Swarat, he is supremely self-independent, he can do it. And when a living entity who is in devotional service prays eagerly to Krishna to take care of his devotional service, then Krishna has to do it. And we see one more example from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 6th canto, is the story of Ajamil. It is very interesting, and I was reading this, that Ajamil, at the age of 88, he had by that time he had 10 sons, not from his wife. We know the story. Ajamil was a young Brahmin, right? Very devout to his parents, to religious principles. And one day he was in the forest, and there, unfortunately, he sees something that he should not see. And that just confuses him, and he starts thinking about it. But at that time, he was able to control his mind because of his rigorous practice. But when he came home, he started contemplating on what he saw. And then he couldn't control it anymore. And then he brings this woman home. And then he did not take care of his parents. He left his wife. Then he had 10 kids. And it is very interesting that he had the last kid at a very ripe age of over 80 years old. Right? So, but the only good thing about all these things was that he named his son as Narayan. Right? And he was so attached to his young son. He should constantly call him, look after him. And even though he was chanting Lord Krishna's names, Narayan, he was not conscious about it. He subconsciously or okay, he's just calling out his son. He never knew that he's calling Krishna or Narayan. But when the time came for him to, go away or leave this body, and we know the story that he chanted Krishna's names, Narayan, Narayan, out of fear, calling his son, not actually calling the Supreme Lord Narayan. And when the Yamdoots, they came to snatch away his soul, what happened? The Vishnu Doots came, right? And the Bhagavatam describes a great argument between the Vishnu Doots and the Yamdoots on what is right in this circumstance and what is not right. And the Vishnu Doots were able to convince the Yamdoots that you cannot take this person. Because although he has unconsciously chanted the holy names of Krishna, not only his sins for this life, but for millions of lifetimes, they have been eradicated or washed away. Because he chanted the names of Krishna in a state of helplessness. Although he was not conscious that he was chanting Krishna's name, because he was chanting helplessly the way we should chant, all his sins have been washed away. The Yamdoots never knew this. For them, Yamraj was a boss. They thought that Yamraj is the whole and soul. He takes all the decisions. They didn't know that somebody above, Yamraj also sits, making decisions. So here Ajamil is saved by Krishna, although he had led a life full of sin, performed so many sinful activities. And then he was given one more chance. Here, he was given one more chance. And then he comes to his consciousness, goes to Haridwar, engages in devotional service, and at the end of his life, he again sees the four personalities who had saved him. So, Krishna, there is a reason why he is called Karuna Sindhu. Because he never lets a devotee go. He'll give chances after chances after chances. And when it is, it is up to us how do you want to take it. We can't take things for granted that Krishna will give chances after chances after chances. Yes, he will do so. Because Prabhupada writes, again, in the Bhagavatam that Krishna is more eager to take us back to Godhead than we are to go. So Krishna is feeling more separation. So, there are three kinds of devotees. One who are Nitya Siddhas, who have never come down to the material world. They've always decided to stay with Krishna. There are devotees who came down to the material world and by practicing devotional service perfected their life and went back to Godhead. And there are devotees or there are souls, jivas, who are still struggling or who have no idea what to do. Basically, they are just in the cycle of birth and death, in the cycle of evolution. So, it is explained that when Krishna sees in Golok Vrindavan these Nitya Siddhas, he is so happy that these jivas, or they're my parts and parcel, they have never left me, and I'm so happy. They've always stayed with me, they never left me. Then Krishna looks at the other section of devotees who went down, burned their hands. Once bitten, twice shy. So they went and they learned their lesson and they came back. So Krishna looks at this group of devotees who have come back, and Krishna feels happy. Yes, at least they came back. And then Krishna looks at the other jivas who are struggling in the material world with absolutely no clue what to do, and he feels very sad. And that is why Krishna comes, he sends a spiritual master, and when he leaves Srimad Bhagavatam. And he constantly is engaged in reclaiming all these jivas back home, back to Godhead. So, by surrendering to the Lord and praying for His causeless mercy, the devotee can progress on the path of complete self-realization. So, we've always heard that devotional service is causeless, and we always depend on the mercy of the Lord, the mercy of the devotees. Our effort combined with the mercy of the Lord is what makes our devotional service successful. So, the story of Ajamil is very important for us in a way because life is uncertain. A lot of challenges come in the life of devotees too, and these challenges can test us to a very different degree. In some devotees' life, it might be to a great extent. In some devotees' life, it may be okay. But challenges normally come, and how do we face challenges? How is our foundation? How strong is our foundation in devotional service? That matters. If our foundation is strong, if our sadhana is strong, if our regular, if you're following the regulative principles strongly, then even if challenges come, we will be able to withstand it. But if the foundation is shaky, it's going to be difficult. So all these demigods, people who pray to the demigods, they only pray for material benefits, which normally, they think, okay, we are doing something. But normally, these material benefits is not even karma kand in a way. Karma kand is what is described in the Vedas as people who are karmis. But normally, these people end up becoming vikarmis or acting against the prescribed duties. So vikarma is something that, okay, you should be avoiding. Then you have karma, the second stage, which is prescribed duties. But devotional service, as we know, is beyond vikarma and karma, known as akarma. Right? So, again, there were a bunch of devotees who had gone to Vrindavan, as Dwaraka was mentioning the other day about Yamuna and Ganga Snan. Remember, he mentioned that if you take Ganga Snan, all your sins are washed away. But if you are taking Yamuna Snan, your piety and your sins, they are all washed away. So karma is something where you're acquiring spiritual credit, and that helps, that builds our foundation so strong. So even if different tests, or if Maya Devi is testing us to a great extent, if our foundation is strong, we will not be able. The story of Ajamil is very important because it gives us hope that even if some challenges come in our life, if we are praying to the Lord and if we are sincere in devotional service, we will be protected. So I will move on to the second purport here. Paragraph. Self-realization is possible in the human form of life, but not in other forms. There are 8.4 billion species or forms of life, of which the human form, qualified by Brahminical culture, presents the only chance to obtain knowledge of transcendence. Brahminical culture includes truthfulness, sense control, forbearance, simplicity, full knowledge, and full faith in God. It is not that one simply becomes proud of his high parentage. Just as being born the son of a big man affords one a chance to become a big man, so being born the son of a Brahman gives one chance to become a Brahman. But such a birthright is not everything, for one still has to attain the Brahminical qualifications for himself. As soon as one becomes proud of his birth as a son of a Brahman and neglects to acquire the qualifications of a real Brahman, he at once becomes degraded and falls from the path of self-realization. Thus his life's mission as a human being is defeated. In the Bhagavad Gita 6.4142, we are assured by the Lord that the Yoga Brishtas, or souls fallen from the path of self-realization, are given a chance to rectify themselves by taking birth either in the family of good Brahmanas or in the families of rich merchants. Such births afford higher chances for self-realization. If these chances are misused due to illusion, one loses the good opportunity of human life afforded by the Almighty Lord. So, taking birth in a pious family or a Brahminical family or an aristocratic family is a privilege, just like being born as a human being is a big responsibility, because self-realization is only possible in the human form of life. It is not possible in any other form of life. Similarly, if somebody is born in a Brahminical family, in a family of a Brahmin or a rich merchant, there is added responsibility. So we look at few examples from the Shastras as to two positives one and one maybe a grey or a negative. So the first one is Jad Bharat. So Prabhupada mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, or gives purport to Krishna's verse in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna assures Arjuna that one who is on the path of self-realization, but for some reason is not able to make it or falls down because of whatever activities, then assurance is there that that soul or jiva will be able to continue again in next life. That is what Prabhupada is mentioning here in the purport, that such a soul or jiva is given a chance to born into a Brahminical family or into a family of rich merchants, which gives you the facility to practice devotional service, probably in a way which most people cannot afford. So we look at the example of Bharat Maharaj. India is called Bharatvarsha, and Bharat Maharaj was a king after whom the great nation is named, right? So Bharat Maharaj was the son of Rishabdev, who is the incarnation of the Supreme Lord. When Rishabdev was there, of course, the story of the historical narration of Rishabdev is there in the Bhagavatam. When Rishabdev retired, he put Bharat Maharaj on the throne. And Bharat Maharaj was such a great king, but it is said that when he retired from his duties as a king, he didn't even look back even once. He just left it. He left his kingdom as something which is really insignificant. He didn't care. And then he goes to the forest. And again, the Bhagavatam explains, over a period of time, he developed symptoms of love of Godhead because he was practicing devotional service in solitude. And he was gaining perfection. But Maya Devi can test anywhere in any circumstance. And because she knew, again, I was reading this article in Back to Godhead by Satsvarup Maharaj. She knew that Bharat Maharaj couldn't be tested by wealth, by beauty, by any kind of opulence, because he was the emperor of planet Earth and he had given away everything, so he couldn't be tested. So she tested him in a very different way by sending this deer, a mother deer carrying this baby deer, and the lion after her. And she had a miscarriage. This baby deer falls into the river. And Bharat Maharaj, because he still had this kindness in his heart, because all his years he had protected his praja, so he took care of this deer, this baby deer. And over a period of time, he got so attached to this baby deer that again it is mentioned that he forgot or he let go of his devotional practice and was so attached to this baby deer that he was just thinking about this baby deer day and night. Now, again, this is very important because Prabhupada has time and again mentioned the importance of association of devotees. Now, Bharat Maharaj is a Mahabhagat, but he didn't have any association in that forest. Only if he had association of devotees, somebody would have corrected him that, hey, you're going on the wrong path, you're deviating, you need to get back on track. But nobody was there to correct him. Because nobody was there to correct him, he was practicing devotional service in solitude. He let it go. he let his mind wander, he let his devotional practice go. And then at the time of death, instead of remembering Krishna, he remembered this deer. And that was his last memory. And in the next life, Bharat Maharaj was born as a deer. But fortunately, as Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, that from me comes remembrance and forgetfulness. Bharat Maharaj was able to remember what was his previous life in the body of a deer. And in this body of a deer, Bharat Maharaj was always around the rishis, near the hermitages of these rishis. And naturally, in due course of time, this deer also passed away. And then Krishna, being so merciful, afforded Bharat Maharaj, as Prabhupada mentions in this purport, birth in a family of a righteous Brahman. And he was named Jad Bharat. And Bharat Maharaj was extremely cautious, or Jad Bharat this time, was extremely cautious not to repeat the same mistake he had performed a couple of lifetimes, back. And although he was so learned, because he had all this memory from previous life, he was so learned, he acted like a madman. And his brothers thought he was very useless. This guy is of no use. So they put him as a scarecrow in the farm, in the fields. A living scarecrow to scare away, the animals or the crows who were destroying the crops. And then we also know the story of Jad Bharat and Maharaj Rahugand. So it's a detailed description of a very great dialogue or debate in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And how Jad Bharat's character came forth as a great Vaishnava or Mahabhagavad. But the point here is that Prabhupada is mentioning here and in the Bhagavad Gita that one who practices devotional service, maybe in this life, or maybe in the next life, or maybe in the future lifetime, Krishna is going to take care of you. It depends on our intentions, it depends on our intensity, and our desire on how we want to progress in devotional service. Krishna is there to facilitate that, but how intensely do we want to serve Krishna? How intensely or how consciously we want to do it? If you want to be relaxed, then it will take time. If you want to just be, okay, I'm going to do it, I'm going to chant 16 rounds today, I'm going to chant 10 rounds tomorrow. So if there is no consistency, the reciprocation from Krishna will also be on that level. So when Krishna says, when you take one step towards me, I take 10 steps towards you, these 10 steps are really big. Because when Vaman Dev takes 2 steps, he covers the entire universe. So if Krishna is willing to take 10 steps or 100 steps towards us, these are big steps. But it is us who are always hesitant or we delay in taking those steps towards Krishna. Because we are so attached to what is ours in this material world. Even though, consciously we know that everything in this material world is temporary, will be taken away at the time of death. Yet, we want to hang on to them. For whatever reason, is it past conditioning, is it past karma, which of course impacts our devotional service in a big way. Right? Past conditioning and past karma, they can be impediments in devotional service. And they act in a negative way to deviate us from devotional service. But again, as Prabhupada mentions in the first line of the purport, by surrendering to the Supreme Lord, everything can be taken care of. So even if our past conditionings or past karma is a hindrance in our devotional service, by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, it can be taken care of. But that seriousness has to come from us. If that seriousness is not there, then it's a reciprocal relationship between Krishna and Jiva. So this story of Jad Bharat is again an important historical narration which emphasizes that if we are practicing devotional service, and if something wrong happens, unfortunately, it doesn't mean that Krishna is going to leave us. Krishna is Bhavagrahi Janardhan. He is always looking at our bhava. He is Karuna Sindhu, ocean of mercy. So he is always going to look after us, no matter what. The second example here is again, a very positive example. As somebody who is born in a family of a righteous Brahmin or a rich aristocratic family and takes up to devotional service and perfects it. Any guesses from the Bhagavatam?
Amrish Raj.
Huh?
Amrish.
Yes, Amrish Maharaj. But yes, Amrish Maharaj is a very good example. I was leaning more towards Parikshit Maharaj. Just because, so Parikshit Maharaj, Krishna saved him personally in the womb of his mother Uttara from Ashwatthama's Brahmastra. Even Arjun couldn't face it. In a way, Arjun faced it, but the second time he released it, Krishna had to personally intervene to save Parikshit Maharaj by going into the womb of Uttara. So Parikshit Maharaj was saved right at birth by Krishna. But, we see here how he was born into a family of such royalty and devotees. He had a great responsibility. And even though he had such a big tragedy in his life, like he was cursed to die in 7 days and 7 nights, he still did not give up devotional service. In fact, he longed, saying, okay, I want to spend the last 7 days of my life or 7 nights of my life in the association of devotees hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he just asked 2 questions. Initially, of course, then there are so many topics in the Srimad Bhagavatam where Parikshit Maharaj is questioning in a humble mood when Shukdev Goswami is discussing topics about Krishna. But initially, his questions were, what is the duty of a person at all times in life? And what is the duty of a person at the time of death? So 2 very important questions which we should never forget. So Parikshit Maharaj is a very positive example here as to somebody who is given the opportunity to practice devotional service and never gives up. Doesn't matter what the impediment is. So it is very interesting to know that Parikshit Maharaj was cursed by this immature Brahman boy, Shringi, who was qualified actually, but he was immature. He cursed for him to die in 7 days and 7 nights. So Parikshit Maharaj is a personality who had personally checked Kali. Kali personified and had the ability to punish Kali. So don't you think he had the ability to punish Takshak too? He would have probably told his entire army, just find this Takshak, when you meet him, greet him with your swords, get it done. Or he would have counter-cursed. He was so potent, he would have counter-cursed. But he didn't do it. He took up to devotional service. He was already a devotee. But how did he spend his last days, 7 days and 7 nights, by just hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam? So when one is born into a family of aristocracy, or Brahmanas, it's even more. It's a life of responsibility. So we should not give it up. Right? We are not in a situation where this kind of tragedy happens. Had to be saved in the womb of the mother and encounter Kali personified. And we cursed, we die, to die in 7 days and 7 nights. We also have problems in life, but nothing of this scale. Everybody has problems because it's dukkhalaya prashashvatam. Miseries will come, problems will come, but they come and go. As Krishna says, they are like summer and winter seasons. They are not permanent, they come and go. But forbearance is a quality that we should develop. We are in the path of devotional service, which is, in a way, because we are Vaishnavas, in a way, of course, we are higher than the Brahmanas in a way, technically. But we shouldn't think like that. But all these qualities, like sense control, forbearance, simplicity, full knowledge, and full faith in God, we should be cultivating that. No matter what our position is. Once we come into a devotional service, it is expected that we develop all these qualities. Because they help us to grow, they help us to progress in devotional service. And it helps us in difficult times. So Parikshit Maharaj is a great example of a person with so many challenges in life. And to your point, Mother, you mentioned Amrish Maharaj. In the face of such a big challenge in Amrish Maharaj's life too, that Durvas Muni wanted to kill him right then and there. He did not waver from his faith in the Supreme Lord. So we should be asking this question to ourselves: if something really tragic happens in our life, are we still okay to perform devotional service, or will we be shaken? So Parikshit Maharaj, and then I had one more example here, which is kind of a not a positive example, but from the Shastras, a person who had all the facilities but did not want to use it and waste his life. Any guesses? Hiranyakashipu is one.
Ravan?
I was leaning more towards Dhritarashtra. Yes, Hiranyakashipu is definitely one example. Dhritarashtra, in a way, was a son of Krishna because Vyasdev was his father. So, and his brother is Vidur, who is Dharmaraj. He has the association of a Mahabhagat or a Mahajan in the form of Bhishma Dev. So he is surrounded by people who are what? Top-notch devotees. And yet, time after time, he wasted his life. Time after time. He wasted all the opportunities that he got to correct himself. Okay, let me put it this way. If people are telling you to do something, you want to ignore them, fine. But if Krishna directly comes and tells you to do something, you still ignore him. That means, of course, he was physically blind. He showed that he was intellectually blind too in a way. Because Krishna personally comes to Dhritarashtra, tells him to do the right thing, saying that you are born into the lineage of what? Yeah. And you are the emperor of this planet. It is your God-given duty that you do the right thing. You cannot be continuing what you are doing. But Dhritarashtra ignored Bhishma Dev, he ignored his father Vyasdev, he ignored Maitreya Muni, he continuously ignored his brother's advice, Vidur's advice, and he ignored his wife Gandhari too, who told him that you should be listening to what Krishna is saying because he is the Supreme Lord. So Gandhari could understand that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Bhishma told him continuously that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Vidur tried to convince him. Dronacharya tried to convince him. He wouldn't listen. Krishna showed him his vision. This person is born blind, had never seen anything in his life, but for 30 seconds or maybe for a minute, he had this divine vision, and he could see Krishna's partial universal form, and yet he couldn't come to this conclusion that I should surrender to Krishna. This is so unfortunate. So he wasted his life in spite of having all the facilities to be successful in devotional service. And to begin with, when Krishna comes as the ambassador to Hastinapur, he was asking for Indraprastha. But Duryodhana said no. But then Krishna said, fine, they are Kshatriyas. As a God-given duty, they need at least something to rule over and administer. Give them 5 villages, small villages. So Dhritarashtra could have, saved everything and said, okay, 5 villages is fine. But he said, excuse me. But he let Duryodhana take the decision here. And what was Duryodhana saying this? I will not give away even that much of land which can be pierced by a I'll take off a needle. And then Krishna said, okay, you wish for the slaughter of the Kshatriyas? So be it. But Dhritarashtra could have stopped it right then and there. And Krishna's guarantee was what? You will still be the emperor. I'm not asking you don't be the emperor. Yudhishthira will still serve you. I'm not taking away your throne. But this whole insecurity that if I give away, then what will be mine? Rather than thinking that if I give something to Krishna, I'm not going to lose anything. Because in essence, originally everything is given by Krishna. Even that desire to reject Krishna comes from Krishna. Because that ahankar, who is the creator of false ego? Krishna. Anything and everything in this world or in this creation is created by Krishna. So even the desire to reject Krishna comes from Krishna. So you cannot say I rejected Krishna. You have nothing. So Dhritarashtra could have saved himself, saved the entire Kuru dynasty, but no. So again, this is a lesson that if we have all these facilities to progress in devotional service, we should take full use of it. What excuse do we have of not performing devotional service when Krishna has given us everything? There has to be no excuse. In Kali Yuga, lifespan is very short. 50, 60, 70, 80 years. People are not making even to 80, 90 now. And before that. In a way, small life, I was listening to this class, in a way, a small lifetime or small span of life is a benediction. Because you can quickly perform devotional service, and if that intensity is there, you might be fortunate that Krishna takes you in this life. So in a way, this small life in Kali Yuga is also good. And I think about this. I'm 39, 40. How much time do I have? And what excuse do I have to not perform devotional service? So that motivation is always there for me. That to just push for 50% of my life is done. To just push for 50 more percent. So devotional service is a great privilege. It's an honor to be chanting Krishna's names. Not many people get it. We have 7 billion people on this planet. How many people? 7 billion. 7 billion people on this planet, right? And how many people chant Krishna's names? And Bhakti Charu Maharaj, Indar Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj. Those people, they chant Krishna's names. So it's a very highly exclusive club when you chant Krishna's name. So we cannot take that lightly, that we are ready to chant Krishna's names. It's a great honor. So when we get opportunities like this, we should always look at examples like Parikshit Maharaj, Jat Bharat, Dhruva Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj. And we should also look at examples like Hiranyakashipu when he went to Lanka to find mother. He went to Ravan's inner chambers, and there he saw, Ravan sleeping on his bed with only one head, of course. And Hanumanji was thinking, this person is so powerful, it will be so great. So, people have all the facilities, if they don't use it, it's very unfortunate. So we should, of course, as I was mentioning, if you look at the examples of Parikshit Maharaj, Jat Bharat, we should also look at the examples from history of Dhritarashtra, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, all these people. Kamsa was related to Krishna, but yet he ended up like that. All these people.
Time you said, if a person who
Maybe I should have spoken in 16. That is also an aspect of Krishna being Swarat. That is what I understand. He is supremely independent. He can do as he pleases. So the example I gave of Swarat, Krishna being Swarat, was in the story of Sandipani Muni, where he goes to Yamraj and says, okay, I want to reclaim. But we have also seen that Prabhupada mentions in his purport that if you perform devotional service, practice the 4 regulative principles, chant Hare Krishna mantra, I guarantee that you will go back to Godhead. So, if you're performing devotional service, then of course Krishna is bound by the tie of affection and love for the devotee who, him or her, has given their life in the service of Krishna. So of course Krishna means Swaraj, can take his own decision, but what I understand is, because you have given your life in the service of the Lord is compelled to take you back. Thank you.
Compelled in a different way than forced.
Yes,
But out of
compelled by love.
Out of love.
Out of love, yes.
Yeah, it's not, it's forced.
Yes, please.
I think I'm allowed to talk. Ajamil, Ajamil got the influence to know what it means. He got that name of Narayana. He also immediately got the realization, Vishnu Budaki. He got the realization. It means it's a fortunate thing. Even though he doesn't like to call real Narayana. But in the case of Ekalayva, who learns the artist things by himself, but finally on the warfield, Krishna took him away and killed him. But why is that? How do you reconcile that? When Kamil he doesn't want to chant, but Vishnu appears because of the name of Narayana. But Ekalayva, even though he begged Krishna to kill in the warfield so that he go to Surkuloka, but Krishna took him away. How do you reconcile that?
I don't know the story of Eklavya Prabhu. I just know that he was rejected by Dronacharya. But what part he played in the Kurukshetra war, I'm not very sure. He came to fight on the side of the Kauravas for Duryodhana. But what part he exactly played and how Krishna dealt with him, I don't know.
Okay.
There's a very good article in the Dandavats.com specifically on that point. The upshot is that Ekalavya was feigning devotion to Dronacharya, his guru, but it wasn't really genuine because he wanted to become better. And it's very nicely explained that way. So that's the reason that Krishna acted differently with him. It wasn't true devotion.
Yeah, I don't know the story of Eklavya Prabhu. Apart from the fact that Dronacharya rejected him. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Hare Prabhupada ki.
Jai.